What's going on, Los Angeles? Happy New Year, Ramsley. It is 2024. I cannot believe it. Wild how fast these years go. We say it every single year. It's so cliche, but the years go by very, very fast. And as you get older, they seem to go by even faster. I cannot believe that we were locked down as a world. It's been almost 4 years now since that, which is crazy. It seemed like that was, life was over as we knew it, which it was for some time. And here we are 4 years later and everything's very, back to normal and moving along. And, at least for us here on this podcast right now. So, but anyway, I hope everyone had a happy New Year with friends and family. Rams get a win on New Year's Eve over the Giants, barely by the skin of their teeth. Missed field goal at the end. We'll get all into the kicking woes for both teams. 26-25, Rams prevail, and later on in the evening, clinched playoff berth, which we'll talk about. But first, my man, Ryan Skinny T. Anderson. Happy New Year, my friend. How are you doing?
Happy New Year to you as well. I am. We had our LAFB holiday party last Friday into the wee hours of the morning.
Mm-hmm.
I was definitely feeling it. I can't sleep in anymore, so I ended up waking up at like 7 o'clock anyway.
Oh,
so
wow.
I was feeling it the next day.
You're ready to be a dad.
I took I took it easy, but I did get this beautiful personalized mug here at that party. So I got to represent that tonight.
There you go. Anyone out there that wants any personalized anything, Mrs. Dyrud, my wife, is creating her own Etsy shop. So hit us up in the DMs or hit us up on YouTube, and maybe the wife can do it. But yeah, New Year's was good. You relaxing New Year's Eve?
Yeah, definitely. It was a lot of fun. I'm going to be stubbornly staying up until after midnight. Because a lot of the old people that I know, they're like, "Oh, I'm just gonna go to bed. I've seen New Year's before. I'm always gonna ring. I'm gonna as long as I can, if I can stay awake, I'm gonna ring in the New Year as it comes in." So pop some champagne and had a good time. Yeah,
good for you. I mean, think about it. If anyone lives, let's say to 100, which is a long, long life, you only see 99 or 100 balls drop. That sounds really weird to say, but you only see New Year's Eve turn to a new year 99 or 100 times.
Yeah.
If you live to 80, you only see it 80 times.
That's you brush your teeth every day. I mean, you do that all the time. You might as well see, something novel occasionally.
Yeah. 99 to 100 times. I mean, it's worth staying up for. Let me ask you this real quick, or you go ahead. You were going to ask me something. Go ahead.
Oh no, I was just going to say it's one of my least favorite holidays and one of my favorite holidays, just because of the crazy show that is out in the world sometimes, and everybody treating it very seriously, and some people having far too good of a time. But it's also, I love the reset of the new year going in. You can start, you can do a resolution or get back into something, or you just it's the cleansing waters of Lake Minnetonka have washed us, and we're now we're on the other side. So that's all. That's why it's my favorite and my least favorite.
Yeah, no, I'm with you. I actually went to Lake Minnetonka this summer, which was cool to go to the famous Lake Minnetonka in beautiful Minnesota. But no, I feel the same way. I love it because of everything you just said. The only reason why I hate it is because then that's like the official end of like the Christmas season. It's like, oh man, it's officially over. All the no more Christmas movies. All the lights come down, the trees go down. On January 2nd, which I'm already losing track of time. That's today, as of this recording. January 2nd is just like a depressing day because it's like, all right, but then there's excitement. Like, okay, time to start new, get back to it. So. With that being, okay, let me ask you my question first, then we'll get into New Year's resolutions, then we'll get into Rams talk. The ball drop. Every year, certain channels show like New Year's around the world. Like I remember watching on New Year's Eve the fireworks show in Bangkok, Thailand, and it was like unbelievable, the fireworks show they had. And, Paris, France does an awesome show over the Eiffel Tower. Sydney, Australia does a sweet show over there, Opera House out there on the water, and all these different places do something so awesome. And, the United States, for all the glitz and glamour we have, all the great American cities we have, what's become the staple is the ball dropping in Times Square, which is very kind of, it's not as cool, I guess, as a lot of the others. Your thoughts on the ball dropping, just out of curiosity.
I've never questioned it ever in my life until just this last New Year's Eve. I did go to the ball drop in my youth. I made the drive from Nebraska to New York, and it was a crazy trip. It's a very long story. Great time in the end of it all, and a good story to tell later on. But it was the first time I ever questioned the New York thing. I think they need to do some sort of ceremony in each time zone, so we have our own thing to celebrate out here in LA. Something in Chicago, maybe something in Dallas or in Minnesota, or in Denver, all great cities, and something different. Maybe we fire something into the Pacific Ocean. But
Yeah.
I think we need to expand and explore what New York is great. We love it. We've seen the ball drop. Maybe we need more.
Yeah. And LA does do some cool things. I know Grand Park does a big festival and fireworks show, and Hollywood obviously does stuff, but it's not known nationally, and sure not known worldwide. Like everyone nationally and worldwide knows the ball dropping in Times Square. And it's funny because it's just not exciting. Like it's honestly like kind of lame, but at the same time, it's so cool just because it's what has always been here in the States. Like you watch the ball drop on New Year's Eve, and it drops 10, 9, 8, all of a sudden it lights up, and that's it. Like there's no like 30-minute fireworks show like you see across the world. But it's become iconic, and it's world renowned. So it is what it is, and we'll take it for what it is, I guess.
Yeah, I don't mind that at all.
Yeah, exactly. So yes, I watched the ball drop as well. Always exciting. My folks were in town, so we were able to go to a nice. Well, they actually stayed and watched our daughter, but me, my wife, and another couple went out to dinner down here in Pasadena, which was great. Then came back home around 10 o'clock, had some champagne, watched the ball drop, went to bed promptly at like 12:10. So it was nice. And then obviously, speaking of iconic, living here in Pasadena, we get obviously the Rose Bowl parade. 2 blocks from where I live, which is awesome. And that is, I think, a really cool event. And then obviously the Rose Bowl game, which was a pretty great game this year. And the Rose Bowl is just as iconic as they come. So the ball dropping might be boring, but we do have a lot of awesome traditions here in the States when it comes to New Year's and holidays. But that being said, I know a lot of people listening are like, man, when are these guys getting the Rams talk? But hey, it's a holiday show. It's the new year. We got to get through all this first. Don't worry, we're going to get to the Rams. Rams are in the playoffs. We got plenty to talk about. Puka Nacua is only 28 yards away from the rookie receiving all-time record. We're going to get into all that. But I got to ask you first, Skinny T, do you have a New Year's resolution? And if so, what is that resolution?
Well, we've been working together for a few years, and I've always wanted to be a prolific writer. And I have a hard time with that because I get a little, trapped in the weeds, and I like to get into details, and I like to find nuggets of information that maybe other sources aren't going to have in their articles to, give myself a little bit of credibility and interest and something to my readers. And shout out to Jason. I always appreciate you, buddy. So I want to get quicker and faster and shorter as a writer, and just more pithy and get the information out there and let the world enjoy it. So that's my professional resolution for this year. But personally, I just need to get back to reading. I love reading. Lived in San Francisco for 10 years, where I would commute to work. So that was always a really easy time to read. Here in LA, it's car culture. Can't read my Ford F-150, unfortunately. I gotta pay attention.
Anyway.
Yeah. So I'm gonna start. Maybe 1 or 2 nights a week, I'm gonna try to knock out 20, 50 pages or something like that. I keep buying books. That's the problem.
Yeah. I hear you. I just bought I just bought this one, the Killer of the Flowers Moon, which a great movie just came out. I haven't watched it. I want to read this book first and then watch the movie. But no, those are great resolutions, and I hope to assist you in completing them. That's the only way I think to do resolutions. You need someone to help you actually complete them, or else after a month you get over it and it falls apart. So for me, professionally, I've absolutely loved where this Rams show has grown. The Rams Skinny, we've seen great growth over the last 2 to 3 months. So thank you to all of our listeners out there. In terms of on YouTube, I want to get this thing to 3,000 subscribers. We're at about 700 right now. So in a year, if we can get to 3,000, I think that's not more of a goal than a resolution, I guess. But get the YouTube to that. Overall listens, which includes our YouTube, includes LA football or the LAFBnetwork.com. If you're not there, you can go to LAFBnetwork.com to watch the show, or anywhere you get your podcasts. I'd love to see us get to 2,000 to 3,000 views per episode. So that's kind of my professional goal here. For the website, we talked earlier, our goal is 40,000 views a day for the everything on LA Football Network. So if you guys can help us get us there, that's amazing. We're going to keep providing the content. And then personally, I've got a couple. One, this is cliche because everyone does it, but trying to get healthier. So my goal is to run twice a week and ride the Peloton once a week. So I feel like 3 nice cardios a week will get me in good shape. I was talking to my mom over the holiday and didn't even really realize that heart disease runs rampant on her side of the family. And I've let myself go a little bit. So that was a nice wake-up call. Like, okay, I need to start getting in shape, eat a little healthier. So running twice a week, biking 1 day a week. So 3 active things a week. 2, like you with reading, it's funny you said that. I want to read 2 books a month is my goal.
Wow.
One professional book, so whether it's on leadership, sales, whatever, and one just for fun, creatively to get the mind going. I just finally finished Matthew McConaughey's Green Lights book. If you haven't read that, fantastic. Finished on the plane back from Colorado to LA. So that, and then finally, this is so bad of me, but I got for Christmas probably 5 years ago from my dad, one of those 1-year Bibles where they separate it. So if you read it every day, you read the whole Bible in 1 year. I've never actually done it. So I want to it's January 2nd. I started today. I want to actually go through it every day and do the 1-year Bible and finish it in 1 calendar year. So long-winded, but those are all my resolutions / goals for 24.
Oh, wonderful. And as you know, and maybe some of our listeners know, I am a runner. So anytime you want to hit the trail, you let me know.
Give me a few months before I'll hit you up. What's sad is I hadn't ran, and we attempted to run a half marathon on New Year's Eve day down in Huntington, and me and my mom, who's turning 60 in February, ran the entire half marathon, never stopped. She jogged and ran the entire way, finished under 3 hours.
Wow.
Me and my wife we signed up for the half marathon. We ended up just doing the 10K. And we kind of ran and walked it, but hey, we completed the 10K at least. So got something, and I'm feeling it today. So all that's great. Happy New Year to everyone. Let's get into some Rams talk. As we transition into that, everyone make sure to go to our friends at Underdog Fantasy, underdogfantasy.com, or the Underdog Fantasy app on the App Store or Google Play. Use our promo code on your first deposit, Rams LAFB. That's all one word, Rams LAFB. You get up to a $100 match deposit bonus. You put in $100, they're going to give you a free $100 to play with. The pick'em's a ton of fun. Pick 2 to 5 players across any sport. Select the overs or unders, and you win. It's that simple. Underdog Fantasy, promo code Rams LAFB. Rams win 26-25. They're in the playoffs. We're not going to spend a ton of time recapping the game because we're kind of looking forward. We'll do our preview show here in a couple days as they close the season out against the Niners, but want to wait a few days just because it's not exactly clear who's going to be playing. The thought is most likely Carson Wentz was starting at quarterback, but we'll wait a couple days so we have some final things before we just say a bunch and it's all moot. So we'll talk a little bit about the game and then talk more about kind of what it means to make the playoffs for this season, how impressive it is and whatnot. But as we always do, Skinny T, your overall thoughts from the game that in reality probably should have lost at the end there, but they hang on, they get the win in the Meadowlands. What's your overall thoughts from the 26-25 win?
That Matthew Stafford and the Rams offense has to win games. And we're already at the end of the season, so it's kind of a moot point. But, when Stafford is balling out and having great games, it looks easy. This one, he struggled a bit. They were blitzing. He had the shortest average depth of target of his year this year, 5.4 yards. Only threw one pass more than 20 yards. Only threw he only completed one pass of between 10 and 20 yards, which is incredible.
Yeah.
So, they were getting after him, and the effects were felt. There was interceptions, there were sacks, there were drops, and the offense just wasn't getting going. We can talk about the running game a little bit, and kind of a little bit of a departure from that, regardless of how good Kyren Williams has been playing. But, this defense has always been a little bit vulnerable. And when the offense isn't able to score 30 points, it ends up in a very, very close game like this. And, special teams, you can't not pay attention to it. You gotta, it can't be an afterthought. The Rams, they got to find a kicker. I was watching the Rose Bowl. Will Reichert, he holds the record for the most points scored in NCAA history. Maybe a third rounder on him. I don't know. We'll see.
Ooh.
Yeah.
Ooh, you're getting in the Niners bag there with old Jake Moody out of Michigan.
Well, the only reason I bring it up is because it's always seemed that they've looked at kicker as a afterthought. Even bringing in Matt Gay, they drafted Sam Sloman that year, tried out, I think, another guy in between him and Matt Gay. And this year it's been even, Marr, and then, they're bringing in people all over the place, trying out Mason Crosby. Obviously that didn't end up working out for the Giants. I mean, it's, these are 2024 questions more so than questions for this year. So those are just kind of my early thoughts.
Yeah. I don't need to add too much to it, because you said exactly that. Like, Stafford didn't have his best game. Credit to the Giants defense and Wink Martindale. They were drawing up tons of different exotic blitzes, which was making Stafford, giving Stafford fits, and just having all kinds of pressure on him that the Rams weren't able to pick up, or Kyren, I thought, did a decent job picking up blitzes, but then that takes him away out of the offense, basically. So either they're getting pressure on Stafford, or they're basically taking one of their biggest weapons out of the offense because he's happened to do blitz pickups. So it was a really well devised game plan from the Giants and Wink Martindale. We talked about Adoree Jackson. We talked about some of those defenders. Like, they have talent on that side of the ball. Kayvon Thibodeau, among others. Dexter Lawrence. I mean, they have guys that can play. And, the Rams still put up 26 points and got when they needed to. They had that drive at the end, which was critical. But, the Giants made it hard on them. And that's what I love. That's why everyone loves the NFL, right? Like, they were a team playing for basically nothing, just pride. Had essentially their third string quarterback in Tyrod Taylor. I don't know why he was a third string. Nothing against Tommy DeVito, but I think Tyrod Taylor probably, as we saw, probably gives you a better shot to win. But they threw the kitchen sink at the Rams, and the Rams, I thought, played not one of their best games. You mentioned the defense. Kicking game is a whole other thing, which we'll get to probably more so throughout this show. But ultimately they sneak away with a win, and they end up clinching due to unforeseen outcomes, or outcomes that happen later in the day, and sitting as the 6th seed right now. We'll talk about more on Thursday what it looks like for them to stay at 6th seed, or if they fall to the 7th seed. But regardless, they're in. Obviously, everyone's wanting to have a matchup with the Detroit Lions. We'll talk later in the week how feasible that is. But they get it done. They escape. But I think where we could turn the conversation, really, I don't think we need to get too much in that. We'll go some negatives right now, because I don't like being too negative. We never want to be too negative. But let's talk a little bit of negatives, and then we'll end with the positives. That is Puka Nacua, Kobie Turner, all these guys, how well they've played, and obviously being now in the playoffs based on what a lot of people project this team to be. But when you look at the negatives, the one concern is, yes, this team's won 4 to 5. Yes, they've looked great since the bye week. But a lot of these issues that we've seen kind of all year, here and there, are most rampant and most prevalent right now heading into this playoff, not push anymore, but now playoff run. And that is, the kicking game has gotten worse than even it was. Obviously, they released Havrisik and brought back Brett Maher, so we'll see if that improves at all. And the defense late letdowns is almost more prevalent now. We saw it in the Commanders game. We saw it in the Saints game. Now we've seen it in the Giants game. We're seeing it in back-to-back games. And then lastly, when talking about special teams, obviously the kicker is the obvious one, but the coverage team has not been great. You lose a game to Baltimore in overtime, giving up a punt return, and now they give up a kick return or a punt return in this game against the Giants, where they just didn't tackle the guy and just let him they basically bodied him, and he spins out of it and returns it. So as bad as the kicking game has been, the coverage teams have not been good either. And so these are things that when you get in the playoffs are going to cost you games. They've gotten lucky because they've played the likes of the Commanders, the Saints, and the Giants. But when you're playing the Lions or you're playing the Niners, you're playing the Cowboys, or you're not going to win those games. So if we got to be negative at all, it is unfortunate these little details are going to cost you when you're playing playoff teams. And so it's really bad timing for it to happen.
Yeah, it's, you mentioned a really great word there, which is details, which that's what special teams is all about. It's 10 guys running down the field trying to make a play, and everybody's got to be in the right spot, reading everything correctly. It's not necessarily an easy position to play, being a special teamer. And it's not a glamorous position either. And because of that, you end up with backups out there. And there's been 7 punt returns in the league this year. There were 3 last year for touchdowns.
Wow.
The Rams have allowed 2 this year.
Yeah.
And that obviously the big things are where people will see the flaws in that. Obviously you can't let that happen, but the details is what makes special teams work together. Everybody needs to be working together in the right spots and doing really physical and putting yourself in harm's way in a lot of ways. And I'm saying all of this to say, although the touchdowns were scored and that's not great, it proves that the special teams is not doing their job in the details, down in and down out. Now you look at if you look at Austin Trammell, he's one of the lowest punt returners in terms of yards per punt return, just around 6.5, I think. It's one of the lowest in the league. Now, that's not an indictment on him because, again, I'm saying 11 people have to be working all together trying to get him more yards. And what that does is it affects field position. And at its very basic level, football is a field possession game. Picking up an extra 3, 5, 10 yards on a punt return is a huge thing. That's something your offense just doesn't have to do. So while there's big mistakes that are glaring and obvious and it can't happen, it's the small details that happen regularly, game in and game out, where they're just not hitting it. This is one of the worst special teams by DVOA in the history of DVOA, which goes back a little ways. I think the 6th worst, I think is what it is.
Wow.
They're 32 currently this year. The next closest, they're around negative 10 yards or 10 points EPA. Obviously giving up points like this is a problem, but the next one is the Patriots at -3. So there's a big gap. I mean, EPA is by decimal points. That's how it's not full points. So it's a huge gap. So, it's I don't know. I don't know enough about special teams to say this is a coaching thing, but I'm going to say that there's a talent discrepancy at every level, and once you get those backups of backups, and we've seen just how shallow the depth chart is. If just one guy goes out, it's really hard to replace him across the board, across this roster. The starters have proved to be fantastic, but you're not putting your starters out there. You're not putting your backups out there. They're the backups. And those guys just don't have the chops right now. They just, they haven't been coached up in the same way. So, multiple things are always factors, and there's no one reason usually. But we're talking about undrafted free agents. We're talking about bottom of the draft, maybe. So,
yeah,
special teams is often overlooked. And I think that, for 2023, that's okay, but they're going to have to find answers. They're going to have to find answers and plug these holes. And you can't allow points on special teams, period, hands down.
Yeah. And you said some really good things there in the sense, like, as we talked about the details, but But, when you look at offense and defense, obviously coaching matters, obviously scheme matters. But at the end of the day, it's kind of like who has more star players? Like, who are the guys that are the stars? And special teams is, like, as you kept saying, the opposite of that. It's the backups. Like, it's basically a pride position. It's guys that are clawing to be in the NFL. That's where they have an opportunity. And so there's always going to be a talent discrepancy. But that being said, that's across 32 special team units. I mean, it's outside of a couple teams that have a dynamic return man, your coverage guys, all of that are still going to be across the board your backups. And the Rams, because of their youth and because of their depth, and we talked about all offseason, 39 rookies going into training camp or whatever, you're going to have automatically a little less talent on that unit than other teams, and you're going to have a lot less experience on that unit than other teams. I mean, you mentioned the Patriots this year being second worst. They were so good for so long because they had guys that they were paying premium for guys just to be special teams players. I'm drawing a blank on the guy's name right now, but they had like a special teams guy that was there for a decade and every year was all pro special teams. And so they put their capital, they put some salary cap, and they put some pride in that unit. The Rams really just weren't able to this year. I'm not saying it's their fault because of their whole remodel and what they were doing across the board at the roster. They bring in Chase Blackburn as special teams coordinator. Obviously I think he's probably fell short in some areas, but I think he's a fine coach. Spent the last 4 years in Carolina, so he's not some like never before been a special teams coordinator. But sometimes, it is coaching in terms of hammering home those details. But as someone that played special teams in high school, again, that was a long time ago. I'm not sitting here saying I know everything, but a lot of it is you can only coach so much on special teams. It's very simple execution. And especially on that Giants return, like the guys were there, the body was there. You just got to wrap up, make a tackle. The one in Baltimore, the guys were there, the body was there. Just got to make a tackle. A lot of it comes down to you have your gap. If you're on a coverage team, and I was mostly a return man, but like I knew at least the roles of everyone in somewhat. If you're a coverage team, so you're the one either punting or kicking, like you basically, for the most part, and the NFL probably gets a lot more granular than high school did. So I'm sure there's other stuff, but overall, when you look across the field, you have a 10-yard kind of radius, if you will. That was like your zone. You didn't deviate from it. So your job was to make sure if they're in your 10-yard it's your job to make the tackle. You're not trying to go across the field, zig and zag and do all this. And if all 11 guys are staying within their zones, you're covering correctly. And then all it comes down to is making the tackle. The Rams, from what I've seen overall, have actually been fairly well in their zones. They're just not making the tackles. So some of that is just lack of talent. Some of that's just, speed deficiencies when you're going against good return man. And so it's not something you can really just correct overnight. It's going to take an off season to get some kind of new bodies in there and stuff like that. So unfortunately we'll see. And teams know that, right? When they're like, wow, there's been 2 returns against this team in a matter of 4 weeks. Like we can really turn a game around if our punt returner can get some loose and maybe shake and bake some guys. So teams are going to specialize in that and know when it's time to punt, they have an opportunity to turn that into points. So it's going to be really important for Blackburn and this coaching staff to get this unit ready. But at the end of the day, it's execution and tackling. And I don't know if we'll see a huge turnaround, but hopefully we won't see any more touchdowns, Skinny T.
Yeah, hopefully not. And, I'm sure everybody knows already Havenstein is gone and Maher's back. I don't know if we mentioned that already. And I don't know if that's a lateral move. Sometimes you just got to fire somebody.
There's got to be like other kickers out there, right? Like we talked about it, 2 shows ago about like how many kickers come and go from college. And like, there's got to be some others out there that are just like, that are kicked in like the XFL or the USFL, which is now the UFL. They've merged, which is kind of exciting for the spring, but right. There's got to be other kickers. Like you don't have to just go back and forth between Maher and Havenstein.
Yeah, well, and you think, you were mentioning soccer players, I think, a couple weeks ago when you're going on a bit of a rant about this, and I think Aubrey, the Dallas Cowboys, was a MLS player, and he's doing fantastically.
Yeah.
And so you got to pull out the stops, and they might have to send a scout or 2 out because they don't. The Rams don't really do that, but like maybe you got to find a back fielder Is that a position in soccer?
I don't get it, man. Last thing I'll say, and then we'll move on to the positive. I don't. I'm not saying this is just about the Rams in general, but in general, kickers. And we talked about a few weeks ago, like you have one job, that's all you do all practice. Someone, I'm not going to call him out because it's not a huge deal. I mean, we want people to engage, but someone commented on that show, was like, yeah, well, it's a dumb point because quarterbacks only have one job, and there's only 5 good ones, and offensive linemen only have one job, and it's like that one job is a little different. Quarterback's got to read a defense, has to learn a huge play sheet, has to communicate everything, has to be able to throw the ball at different levels down the field, has to be able to hand the ball off, has to be able to do check with me's, have to do hot routes, all this. Offensive linemen, same thing. Like they're going against blitz pickups, running game, gap scheme, zone scheme, A gap, B gap, all these different things, pass protection, run protection. Kicker, you literally have one job. You kick a football. Sometimes it's 30 yards, sometimes it's 50 yards. Sorry. So maybe your job's a little different in terms of yardage, but you have one thing. You keep your head down. You connect your right or left foot at the center of the football and try to make it go in. That is it. There's no other hot routes, zone reads, anything like that. So for whoever said that, if you're listening, appreciate you. Thanks for commenting, but I disagree. It's very, very different.
Yeah. And we're not besmirching kickers. It's a hard job.
It's hard. Yeah.
It's hard.
It's not easy.
Yeah.
But it's got to be better than what it is. I don't know. I feel like kicking game used to be better than what it was.
And that's been my point is, I keep thinking it's just an afterthought. It's been an afterthought for the Rams, and there's good kickers out there. And they're found all over the place. And, if you're waiting too long to find the kicker, if you don't want to spend the money, if you don't want to give the money to Matt Gay, this is what you're getting. I don't know how else to say it. There's a possibility they're going to lose a playoff game because they miss a field goal or there's a return punt or, whatever. So if that's what you want,
worth 3 million or whatever Matt Gay got, 2 or 3 million, I think it's worth it. And they would probably say the same. Obviously they were very cap strapped and we know how the offseason went. So, but yeah, that will definitely be when they have this 90 million surplus this offseason. That is going to be a point of emphasis, is go get a damn good kicker you can count on, whether it's one that's proven or I don't want to use like top 3 round draft. I'm not saying that because it's been proven. I think we did an article on this a while ago about like what the top tier kickers, either when they were drafted and like of the 32 kickers in the NFL, this was going into the season. And I could be wrong because I can't remember the exact numbers. Maybe you remember, but it's like of the 32 kickers, like 18 of them have been undrafted. 10 of them were like 6th round or later. And then it was like 3 were like top 4 rounds or something like that. So you don't need to spend draft capital on it, but they got to at least spend some money. But anyway, that's another conversation for the offseason or when they lose a playoff game because of a missed kick, which hopefully we don't have to talk about that. But let's end the show with some positives here. Who do you want to start with? Puka Nacua or Kobie Turner?
Let's throw some love at Kobie.
Throw some love at Kobie Turner. We're going to talk a lot more about it when the season officially ends. As of right now, last I checked on betonline.ag, betonline.ag promo code BELIEVE gets you a 50% welcome bonus. Telling the guys at the Rams Skinny sent you. Last I checked, I'll try to pull it up or you can while I'm talking. He had the 3rd, whatever you call it, highest, lowest. He was in 3rd in terms of odds to win Defensive Rookie of the Year with Jalen Carter in 1st and Will Anderson in 2nd. And I don't agree with that. That's not being a homer. To me, I would have him 1st and Will Anderson still 2nd and Jalen Carter 3rd. I don't know how he's 1st. Maybe that's just because being a 1st-round pick, as both those guys are, and Turner being, a mid-round pick. But what he has done, 2.5 sacks against the Giants, moving his total almost to double digits. He's at 9, which is tied for most among rookie defensive linemen with the greatest of all time to do it, Aaron Donald, who got 9 his rookie year in 2014. This dude, if he plays on Sunday, which I think he will, being a rookie, and you got to have some tread on these guys. If he gets another sack and gets to 10, he's got to win Defensive Rookie of the Year, right?
I mean, you're looking at the odds, and you're talking about those guys that are within, Jalen Carter and Will Anderson above him, I guess is what I'm trying to say. Will Anderson has a good amount of pressures, but Kobie has more sacks. Jalen Carter's, below him in pressures and below him in sacks.
Yeah.
And you just compare the draft capital where they were picked up. Those guys were both first rounders.
Yeah.
And this guy, third round, 89th pick.
Yeah.
You draft people always talk about the top 100. Well, he's 89th. I mean, he's within the top 100, but a couple things go a different direction, and he's outside the top 100, and he's producing a lot. Now,
yep.
There's a lot of advantages he has, I guess, which is the depth isn't very deep, so he's an automatic starter, and he's playing next to the greatest defensive player of all time. But go back and look at other defensive, nose tackles. That Greg Gaines wasn't doing this.
Yeah, A'Shawn Robinson wasn't doing it. I mean, he wasn't a true nose, but on the D line, Sebastian Joseph Day, I don't think he was putting up those numbers.
Definitely not. Yeah.
So
it's funny because it's like a retroactive negative that he was drafted so late. Like, what's wrong with this guy? Or, what can you football's a team sport, everything plays in together. So it's not like Will Anderson isn't benefiting because DeMeco Ryans is his defensive coordinator. And it's not like, look at Jalen Carter's defensive line, who he's playing next to. Like,
pretty good.
He should be doing a bit better. If he's actually first round talent, and Kobie's beating him. So, this is the thing that always drives me crazy about award season. Mm-hmm. It's just this constant back and forth about, who's better, and it's only a handful of people that vote for it. So, they just don't want to look silly, I guess.
And we'll see. One more game to play. The odds aren't everything. Obviously, it's that people decide when they vote, but usually Vegas has a pretty good idea of what goes down. But obviously, he's number one in LA's hearts, and what a phenomenal season. And this just goes again to show how great this draft class was in terms of these players really showing out, but in terms of their plan. And you could totally tell, based on how this season went, with everything they did in the offseason in terms of releasing players, trading players, and then who they drafted, that they, whether it was Les Snead, Sean McVay, Kroenke, whoever, all the brass got together and made a plan for the future of this Rams organization. And every move, I think, was so strategically organized down to which type of player they were drafting and how they develop those players. Because a lot of times, too, when you draft, in the NFL, everyone's different, right? Like, there's obviously, you still have to have good coaching in the NFL, no doubt. But there's some players that you draft as, okay, this is a marquee blue chip franchise player. You kind of draft, you plug him in, and you kind of you let him go, right? You're like, okay, you were drafted to just because
you know what you're doing.
You know what you're doing. Go do your thing. I'm not going to get in your way. I'll give you some pointers here and there. Go do your thing. The Rams, because they haven't had a first round pick since Jared Goff, they're not getting those blue chip guys. They've put a premium of, we need to find, and we joke about this in the offseason, what we call it, the DIYers, the guys that, you gotta develop, the do it yourself. Like it's a project. They've drafted projects that they need to develop. They're malleable. They are, constructive to coaching, because a lot of players, you got to be able to take that coaching on and then, put it into practice, and not every player can do that. And, they've missed on some over the years, but this draft class, they absolutely knocked out of the park. And Kobie Turner is a perfect example, because when drafted, I think a lot of people, I don't know if I'm trying to think back to our draft show. I don't know if we did necessarily, but a lot of people thought it was probably over. They took him too high. They could have got him lower, where he was drafted out of Wake Forest. And did they need to use a third round pick on him? And you see the results now. And we've talked a lot about how Coach Henderson is probably one of the best defensive line coaches in all of football, but how he's been able to get ingrained in him. And obviously playing next to Aaron Donald, but also practicing next to Aaron Donald certainly helps, but you still got to go do it. And he's done that in spades. So you can I'm just trying to make the point is you can see their strategy in this draft class of guys that they knew that they could develop. And if they could develop them the way they envisioned, they would not only have good success this year, more than everyone thought, but they'd have a draft class of players that was a foundation for the future, which I think everyone can say through one season of play, they absolutely have that in this class. And moving forward, things are looking very bright. And so that gets us now to where we're in the show with Puka Nacua, who is, 10 yards away from Ja'Marr Chase, 28 yards away from the overall rookie receiving record. 5th round pick, BYU. When he was drafted skinny, I don't want to take a victory lap, but I remember saying, like, he reminds me a little bit of Cooper Kupp. He has that potential, had some running ability at BYU, 300-plus yards running the football in jet sweeps. He can block. He's not the fastest, not the most athletic, but he's a guy, if he can stay healthy, he's going to give you a good output. Did not think he'd have this kind of output. Definitely did not think that. I did not even think he would be probably wide receiver 4, but I thought he had potential to be a contributor at some point, and he has blown everyone away. Your thoughts on Puka, and will he break the record on Sunday?
So I just wanted to lob one stat at everybody just for to drive your point home about Kobie Turner even more. The longer you spend in the franchise, you're getting more coaching from the guys. So Kobie Turner starts his career with 2 sacks or 1 sack in the first 3 games, and then picks one up in Green Bay later on. In the final 6 games, he has 7 sacks.
Yeah.
So that's right. Coaching. That he's progressing, he's learning, he's absorbing everything. So Kobie Turner, good case, rookie of the year. I think. Well, here's the thing: we don't know who's in, we don't know who's out. Mm-hmm. What I hope for is Sean McVay knows exactly how many yards this guy needs. He's going to hit him a couple of times, and he's going to pull him out of the game. So that's that's what I think is going to happen. I think he's going to break the 63-year-old record. I want to say from 1960. I'm not great at math, but that sounds right. Mm-hmm. That's pretty amazing. And passing a guy like Ja'Marr Chase. So the hit is that. Gorman did it in 14 games, and this is a 17-game season. So, you take what you can get, but he's beating Ja'Marr Chase, and Ja'Marr Chase is seen as, I picked him in my fantasy football draft because I thought he was going to have a, MVP caliber season. And, Ja'Marr Chase is year in and year out often seen as maybe the 1 or 2 best receivers in the league. So, Puka Nacua is now in that conversation. This is what we're going to have the expectation for the next few years for his career, is that he's going to continue to produce these. And I think CJ Stroud has had a fantastic first season as well. But I mean, this is historic. CJ Stroud's doing very, very well, but it's not historic. And I think they. Again, the voters, whatever. But he's my offensive rookie of the year.
Yeah, I totally agree. And yeah, it's hard. And most likely Stroud will win it. It seems to always be a quarterback award similar to the MVP. You think a few years back when it was between Justin Jefferson and our other guy over in LA, Justin Herbert. And Jefferson had a phenomenal rookie receiving year. I think at the time, he was close to the record as well. Had a fantastic season, ended up giving it to Herbert, who I think was very deserving. I think Herbert, broke some records himself, which is impressive. So, but it feels kind of like that, where even with how great Puka Nacua's season's been, CJ Stroud would probably still get it. Now, he did miss 2 games, so that could, in terms statistically, bow in Puka Nacua's favor, but obviously Stroud on all the sports book is still the favorite. So we'll see. But either way, I mean, if you hold the record, I think that's enough than a silly MVP award. But if your record's in history, right? I mean, MVP, I guess, is too, but record is, not to be forgotten, like who won a rookie MVP
And it's over 50 years old. It's been a half
Yeah.
a century since we've seen this. And yeah, Jefferson had 1,400 yards his rookie season. So, phenomenal. And we were talking before the show, and I was pulling up stats. It's, only Odell Beckham in any modern sense has more yards per game than Puka Nacua. So, just another feather in his cap. So, we're going to sing his praises. Obviously, we're probably a bit biased on this, but how can you argue with the most?
Yeah. And CJ Stroud, take nothing away, but second overall pick, 5th round pick. Very impressive what he's doing. And well, I agree with you. I think McVay, knows the importance of Puka Nacua to this team going to the playoffs. But, when you have something like this historic, he's a player's guy. I think he gets out there and says, all right, let's go get him 30 yards, and then we can sit him down the rest of the game and get some of these other guys some reps, which maybe they'll play guys the whole game fighting for that 6th seed. Who knows? But either way, hats off. So Rams are in the playoffs. We'll talk a lot more about it here later in the week when we preview. It's Niners week. It doesn't have the same feeling because I think a lot of backups are going to be played between both teams. Both teams are in the playoffs.
The Darnold Carson Wentz Bowl.
Yeah. Darnold, Carson Wentz. I mean, that could be kind of fun, but
I'm
doesn't have the same kind of, I'm very interested, but it doesn't have the same kind of like hate rivalry feel just because, both teams are basically know where they stand. And this is kind of just a formality at this point. Whereas it could have looked very different had both teams not locked up their said spots. And, Rams were fighting for a playoff spot. Niners were fighting for the 1 seed. It would have really even ramped up the rivalry this week. Not that it needs any more of that, but we won't really get that this week. That's okay. It's still Niners week. You still got to get the win, want to get the win, especially with how the Rams have struggled against the Niners in the regular season. But no matter what, they're in the playoffs. We'll have all that talk later in the week. Can't wait for it. But thank you all for hanging out with us on the Rams Skinny. Happy New Year to all. Rams are in the playoffs, and we are thrilled to be covering this team for, we never not covering this team, but we're thrilled to be talking about more games for at least another week longer as they'll be in the playoffs here, in about 10 days or so. So looking forward to it. But for Ryan Skinny T. Anderson, I'm Ryan Dyrud. Thank you all for hanging out on the Rams Skinny. If you're on YouTube, make sure to like and subscribe or go to the Rams LAFB YouTube channel. If you're on the website, lafbnetwork.com, or anywhere you get your podcast, just look for Rams Skinny. Follow us on Twitter at RL Anderson LAFB, at Ryan Dyrud LAFB, or at LAFB Network for all the main stuff. Thank you all. Be well. Go Rams. We'll talk to you here in a couple days.